Hey, Matt Wheeler, how are you?
I'm
And
doing good.
and are you wearing socks? Because it's really hot in Arizona.
No,
So,
no,
like,
I am wearing socks, but I've learned that with this new background, I have to take the sock off.
yes.
I thought this one was a fun one. Um, so this one is pizza.
Oh, now I'm hungry.
Okay, well, so that's the fun part. I also on the side, which people don't normally see, it says so hangry. And I'm not going to be talking about hangry today. But yeah, those are my fun socks.
Good
Uh,
job.
Thank you. I'm gonna get that back
If
on there.
there's a sudden pizza order explosion today, it will be
Yeah,
because you're wearing pizza socks.
it's because of the 20 people who are on here watching that were like, oh, I'm so hangry. I need some
Yeah,
pizza.
exactly. So, what you got for us today?
Okay, so I've got several things. And when I have new couples come in, or even when I tell people, like if I'm just randomly talking to people about what I do for work, as far as all the couples counseling that I do, people will often say, oh, yeah, man, what we really need is we need to learn to communicate better. And it's interesting because a long time ago, I kind of learned that it's really not communication that people struggle with. Most people, oh, this is going to sound funny. Most people communicate fine. And there are obviously always exceptions. But what I've told people is it's not communication that's the problem. It's learning how to listen. People don't know how to hear each other. Now, that's especially true when I'm in a conversation with somebody and I've been hurt, right?
Mhm.
Empathy is going to go down when my pain goes up. And so when you're in an intimate relationship, what happens is we have greater opportunity for causing each other pain. And so my likelihood of being able to listen goes down. And so I've got a couple of notes and I pulled them up here on my phone. And there it is. So I was listening to and reading a book by Sue Johnson, which I love. It's called Hold Me Tight. I base a lot of my work, or most of my work, off of the emotionally focused couples therapy. And I wrote down this note, and this is essentially what she's saying in the book. Until we address the fundamental need for connection and the fear of losing it, so we have to address our need for connection and our fear in losing connection. Happy couples aren't any more articulate in their communication skills than any other couples. So this is the research that was being done. When you find happy couples, they aren't any more articulate in communication skills. So people come in, we need to communicate better. And it's like, actually, we need to learn to listen to our fundamental need to connect and the fear we have in losing it. That is actually more important than articulate communication. And so when when we, and I'm thinking about couples who, because obviously we deal with addictions and other things at Seeking Integrity, when we have a couple that is facing the essentially the trauma of having an addiction and betrayal in their relationship, we have to realize that the fear of losing connection is actually typically what's driving the person struggling with an addiction. The fear of losing connection is what's driving the person who has suffered the betrayal. In fact, that's why the betrayal hurts so bad, because it's this realization of what I've maybe known all along, is that I didn't have the connection that I was hoping to have the whole time. So we have to recognize that fear and losing connection. And then I was going to go to a couple other tidbits that I was just, as I was reading, I was like, man, I'm going to share this on the webinar. When our relationship starts to go bad, it's interesting because the research shows that men will typically talk of feeling inadequate and rejected and feeling like they're a failure, where women talk about being abandoned and talk about being disconnected. And so that's what, some interesting patterns there. How often are men talking about their loss of connection by saying, I feel inadequate, rejected, I feel like a failure? Women are talking about that same feeling, which is, instead of saying I feel rejected and I'm abandoned and I'm inadequate and I'm a failure, they're saying I feel abandoned, I feel disconnected, I feel all alone, I feel completely shut out. That's their way of trying to say, where is the connection? I'm longing. And then, as I'm going to jump into a couple more things, this was another thing that really jumped out to me. When marriages fail, it's not an increase of conflict communication. So marriages don't fail because conflict increases. Marriages fail because of the decreasing emotional responsiveness. Now that one, I love to hear that one, because we can deal with conflict. What we can't deal with is a decrease of emotional responsiveness. So if I come to you and I'm seeking connection, I'm seeking peace, I'm seeking love and affection of some sort, and I get no response from you, that feels the worst. Even an unhealthy response feels better than no response. And so when marriages fail is where that emotional responsiveness dries up. And think about this: if there's ever been a time where you've quit something in your life, it gets to a place where you're just like, I don't even care. I don't even have emotion around this anymore. Right? That's the place where we're like, you know what? I think I've got what I need. I'm out. And so that's when our marriages, that's when I tell people, you got to be, if you care about the marriage, that's where we're nervous. When that emotion dries up. The last little thing I was going to throw, nope, that was it. That was the last piece I was going to throw out there. And then just going to kind of open it up. And I'm sure you've got some wonderfulness, Tammy.
Well, they've got some questions, but I was the decrease in emotional response, and before you even started, it isn't communication, it isn't talking at, it's the listening. And what I have found is the being curious, because if I don't if I'm formulating my response to and doing the counterattack, and I can't tell you how many emails that I've answered just today again with, he's defensive, he's whatever, he's pushing back, he's not available, all of those things. Right. And so, so the ability to be emotionally present and to not freak out when, something negative is coming, that's a very different way of doing it. But listening, and I think it's also listening with the eye to what's really, like, the words are one thing, but what's really being communicated, what's that underneath emotion, and if it's abandonment, I might be saying, you never show up and you never whatever, but I'm really feeling alone here, that's, so getting to that underneath layer.
Yeah, if you take that one statement I made about men typically talk about feeling inadequate, a failure, there was one other thing. And rejected. If you take just that statement, if a man's being defensive, you might just ask, hey, are you feeling like I'm calling you inadequate? Are you feeling like I'm rejecting you right now? I wonder how often you're going to bring down his defensiveness just by poking into that and saying, hey, is that what's happening? Is this why we're having this response? And with a woman, it'd be the same thing. If she's being defensive, hey, do you feel like I'm abandoning you right now? Do you feel like what was the other piece? It was abandonment.
Abandoned and disconnected.
Oh, are you feeling disconnected right now? I guarantee you almost every time and I hate to make it so sex specific, right? But honestly, I mean, that's really even what I see in my clinical practice among genders is probably 75% of the time, if that. And so if you lean into that and just point that out when you see the defensiveness coming up, as opposed to, like Tammy, you're saying you're coming in with your immediate response, you'd be amazed at how much softening would start to occur in the relationship.
Well, but it also gives an opportunity to go, yeah, I am feeling rejected, or wait, that's not quite it, but here it is. But then it's a communication, and I'm slowing everything down so it isn't, back and forth.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first question. So we have somebody who was a client in our program in May. This is the addict. Our relationship has improved, yay, and we are. This was just in May, so 2 months later, and we are now talking about planning a vacation together. Do you have any advice?
I actually love this question. One, because it's fun to hear about people having improvements, right?
Hmm.
And the other thing is let's be honest, vacations, as awesome as they can also be highly triggering, right? I'll just go there and use that word. They can be emotionally responsive. I would first start off and have a conversation. I might go to my spouse and say, hey, here's what I would like for you to have on our vacation. I want you to have the ability to relax. I want you to feel peaceful. I want you to have opportunities to connect with me. Here's what I'm wanting for you, and here's what I'm wanting for me. And I would have a conversation about the different longings and desires that you both have for each other. And then I would say, what do you think we need to do to help that to happen? Because you might think, you know what I want? I want to relax. I want to go, and I'm just going to make this up. I want to go relax on the beach. And I just want to not have a care in the world. And your partner might be like, hey, that sounds great, except the beach is a really scary place for me to be. I can't just go and relax there all day long because there's too many triggers or whatever, right? And so I would have a conversation about, what is it you're longing for? What is it I'm longing for? And how can we get that met for each other? If you think to yourself, well, I want these really good moments to connect, ask yourself this: what am I planning to do to help us connect? Well, I know that my spouse really likes word games like Boggle, right? Okay, well then, you know what? I'm bringing the Boggle board. I'd say board, but whatever it is that you use in Boggle, right? I'm going to bring this because, and then once or twice a day, I'm going to say, hey, you want to play Boggle, right? Like, you want to play a game? And I'm going to plan activities and ask my spouse, hey, I was thinking we could do this. I know that you tend to really like this. Would this be something you want to do right now? And now your spouse might be like, no, I just want to go for a walk. Okay, great. Like, but it's increasing that acknowledgement of what each other's longings and desires are, and then have a conversation about, what are the places you think you might be most triggered, that you might most have an emotional response, and talk about as many places as you can think of. And then how do we incorporate places we still want to go that might be triggering? I don't love the idea of just avoiding everything that might be a trigger. Sometimes it's, how do we work through that so that we can go and enjoy that, even though it may be triggering? So that's a conversation that I would have. I'd also have a conversation. Here's the things that I think would be good, that I've found are helpful when you have an emotional response, that have helped to calm you in the past and help you know that I'm here for you. Are these a good idea? And are there any others that I'm not thinking of? And I'm telling you, write these things down. As you guys are having a conversation, write them down, laminate it if you have to, and carry it in your pocket. Because if you need to pull out the cheat sheet in a moment of difficulty, pull it out and use it. So these are, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. These are just what I came up with quickly. Tammy?
I have a couple of things. First of all, your recovery doesn't take a break. So I highly encourage you to plan some consistent recovery work throughout. You know, I mean, I personally love going to meetings in lots of different places. And so taking a vacation from recovery is like inviting addiction back. I just, you know, like, so I would absolutely, you know, plan on that. I would have the conversation that while we want to have this magical time, you know, I mean, like what, if you ever go to a theme park, you know, like while it's supposed to be a magical place, you see all the, you know, stressed out faces and things like that. So understand that there will be stress, and what can we do, and how can we ground each other? You know, how can we ground each ourselves, but also ground each other? I'm feeling a little stressed. Me too. Okay. How do we just, you know, co-regulate, you know, in this moment, and have a plan for, we aren't going to do this perfectly. So how do we um get back to a safe place for each of us, you know, and to have it be overall, we have a plan for a good vacation, not have, you know, not have perfection as the goal, but just that we can solidly do this together. And, you know, and at the end of it, you know, come out going, you know, yay, we accomplished that. So realistic expectations, I guess, is my, you know, is my thought.
Yeah, and I love that because I was focused on communication and specifically what topics to cover as a couple. But I think it is really easy to forget that whatever routines and rituals that I'm doing right now that are working in my recovery, I need to keep that up on my vacation, right? If I'm attending a 12-step every day right now and that's working for me, then attend a 12-step every day on your vacation, right? Like it sounds maybe kind of a buzzkill, but I think it's phenomenal. You want to keep your recovery going, and don't you dare take a vacation from recovery. So whatever those routines and rituals are, and you can always find online 12 steps, or like you said, Tammy, if you're heading to Puerto Rico, I guarantee you can find a 12-step somewhere. It may not be in English, it might be, but right, go. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, and if it's a little insurance policy that the other 23 hours of the day can go, well, good investment. So, okay, next question. Can you still have sex with your partner while he is in recovery? How do you navigate sex life in general with partners in recovery? That's a
Great.
big question.
Oh, it's a big question. And honestly, ask more questions as I open this up because I'm not going to be able to cover everything. So any other questions you have, shoot them in there. Can you still have sex with your partner while he's in recovery? Well, shoot, I hope so.
They added, I forgot to mention some context. He has porn masturbation addiction. So that's further down. But anyway,
Yeah.
I just found that.
Yeah, so I'm going to say absolutely. I hope you do. And why? Because sex can be really fun and really enjoyable, and it can be very beneficial for a relationship. And I will say that one of the things that we have to be careful of, sometimes in an effort to control or manage out of control sexual behavior, we can swing the other direction and become anorexic, right? And so just because you have the absence of something doesn't mean that you're healing. Just because we don't have any unhealthy acting out sexual behavior doesn't mean that the person's healing, right? They could be shut down sexually and not learning how to have healthy sexual experiences. And so I tell people all the time, like, the absence of sex does not mean that you're suddenly having healthiness. I would argue that what I've seen is that typically somebody who is engaging sexually with their committed partner is going to be doing way more to resolve those neural pathways in the brain to create connection and learn how to have a healthy sexual relationship. I think the question is, as a partner, do I feel in a good enough place to have sex with my partner in recovery, right? And I think, unfortunately, sometimes as partners, we might be like, well, I don't want to stir anything up, or what if he or she is thinking about somebody else? We'll have that conversation. What do we do if we're having sex and you start fantasizing or thinking about somebody else? How do you let me know? Right? The question is, how can I show up for you? How do we pull back into having a together experience instead of two of us having separate sexual experiences with each other? And so we need to have those conversations about, hey, how often when we're having sex are you focused and connected with me? Because it's, again, what we want is to learn to have a healthy, connected sexual relationship together. And many times that just hasn't happened. Lots of times the person struggling hasn't ever learned how. And so it's kind of starting this relationship fresh with the understanding that, hey, we've got a lot of ground to cover and a lot of work to do. So I am sure I could go into so many other concepts there. Tammy, what's coming up as you're hearing me talk?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, people often use like, he stopped 3 days ago and he's in recovery. And that's, so I talk about abstinence is just not doing the problematic behavior. And then some sobriety is, okay, I'm starting to get this, but recovery honestly takes a while. I mean, we use, 18 months to 2 years kind of as a benchmark, and that's just a benchmark. It's not, there's no switch flipping at, any of those moments. So if he stopped the problematic behavior, great. For many partners, they do feel, just like Matt was talking about, that they're part, it's separate experiences, that a porn addict is replaying, those images in their head while they're having sex with you. They feel like they're part of the porn. So making sure that that isn't happening for you. And we talk about all the time on different webinars and things too, like sensate, focus, touch. The point of sex is, if it's connection, it isn't just about having an orgasm and intercourse and all. I mean, it really is, it goes back to the communication, talking but listening, to what that is. But sensate, focus, touch is really helpful. It's non-sexual touch, but it's really connecting, but and Dr. Rob says, and you said porn and masturbation, but Dr. Rob says all the time, do you want to have sex with somebody that you don't trust? And so I think that's a part of
Right.
your healthy boundaries are like, do you feel that this person is trustworthy? Do you feel, I mean, so many partners are so raw with betrayal. And they're also scared that if I don't have sex with him, he's going to go do that. And so really identifying what is safe for you would be where to start. And then, and here's a really big clue. If he's going, you have to have sex with me or I will, that's not a good reason.
Yeah, no.
That is not a good reason to have sex. So.
Yeah, and I'll throw out a couple of quotes here. There's a quote by Emily Nagoski, who I love, where she says, it's not dysfunctional to not want to have sex that you do not like, right? And so a lot of times as a partner, you might be like, I don't want to have sex. Well, ask yourself, is it because I don't like the sex we're having? What do I need to have change? Do we need to have more eye contact? Do we need to change locations, change positions, change circumstances, change the environment, right? And too often we focus on trying to enforce sexual arousal in the relationship, when most of the problems with sexual disconnection in a coupleship is actually what's decreasing arousal. So it may sound silly, but one partner might be like, I'm not in the mood. And it's like, well, why? Well, I've got clothes in the dryer and I have to get all those clothes out of the dryer and hang them up before they get wrinkled. Otherwise, I can't relax my body. And so it's like, well, then what tasks do we need to have taken care of so that we can be focused on each other? Because if all I can think about is the clothes in the dryer wrinkling, I'm not going to enjoy it. And so that might be sex that I don't like to have. And so I think that's important to recognize. The other quote that I love, it's by a woman, Peggy Kleinplatz is her name. And she says, sometimes low desire is the evidence of good judgment, right?
Oh,
If you find yourself having low desire, it might be because your body and your brain are going, it's kind of like that first quote, right? I don't give you the example I give is if somebody says, hey, do you want to eat dinner? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, good, we're having liver and
onions.
onions, right? I'm like, oh, suddenly I'm not
I'm not
hungry,
hungry. Yeah.
right? My low desire is evidence of good judgment.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm all cool if you guys like liver, but so I think it's important on navigating a good sex life in recovery is really about trying to figure out how to have good sex with each other. And a lot of times, if somebody's been struggling with an addiction like pornography their whole life, they don't even know what kind of sex they like because they know that they like the dopamine hit. But I've worked with so many people who look at porn and they're like, I hate it, but I can't stop doing it, right? So just because they've been struggling with this compulsive behavior, this out of control behavior, doesn't mean they even understand what they like and don't like sexually. So it is a really cool journey to go on in recovery. But it's going to take some work.
Okay, next question. When is an SA husband able to give context to his behaviors? Like, what were you thinking or feeling at the lead up? Where was I? How did you navigate this whole other life, making sure I wouldn't catch you? What were your process of thought prior to action? It's been 2 years since I discovered, and I'm still unclear.
Oh, totally. I'm going to tell you this. And you said SA, a sex addicted husband. Here's the terrible answer is this. He may always be learning to give you context as he learns to discover it, right? A lot of times it's like, what were you thinking? And it's like, I wasn't. In fact, that was the point. I didn't want to be thinking. I just wanted to act or be acted upon, right?
Mhm.
Like, so you ask these questions like, what were you thinking or feeling? I wasn't. And I didn't even want to think or feel anything except euphoria, right? Like, so it's really tough because you're coming at it from a very logical, grounded, healthy brain. And you're asking questions like, can you help me understand the chaos? Well, in a lot of cases, a person doing this healing is going to figure out the answers to those questions in small layers over time.
Mhm.
And I've had people like 20 years into recovery be like, oh my gosh, I just figured this out. And they're sharing for the very first time something they've been trying to figure out for 20 years. And so the cool part is this. If they are slowly giving you context or asking themselves those questions, trying to figure it out for themselves, that's what we're looking for. If it's, I'm not talking about it, I'm never going to talk about it, I don't have an answer for you, and rather than, you know what, that's a great question, I don't know. Here's and the other question, the answer that you'll get a lot is, well, here's what I think. And then you wonder why a month later it's something different. And 6 months later, it's something different because it's ever evolving. It's ever evolving because the brain is forever trying to figure out how to make sense of it. And so it's tough because you as a partner oftentimes want to know so that you feel safe. If he or she has the insight, maybe they won't do it again. Well, maybe that would be the hope, but we don't know for sure. What we don't want is them getting back to a place where they aren't feeling and aren't thinking anymore. They just don't care. They're numbing the world. They're shutting everything off. That's when you're going to get back to most likely a slip or a relapse or something of that nature.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And the 20 years. I mean, I hate to do that. At some point, he's got brokenness. This is a maladaptive coping mechanism. So he didn't know how to do life. He absolutely was not ever thinking that he was going to get caught, because he did it for a long time and didn't get caught. And so I mean, that continues to be the thought of, and as long as she doesn't know, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, there's so much of that, and it isn't even like a conscious thought. It's just how we are. It's that,
It's instinctual.
yeah, yes, and I say, the compartmentalization, and as long as the compartments don't leak into each other, it's all fine. But you've had discovery, so at some point, I was at my 12-step meeting yesterday, and we talked about, acceptance is the key. And at some point, it's like accepting he has brokenness. If he's doing the work, he can heal, and you guys can move forward together. And there will continue to be insights. I say this often. I've been around this stuff for a long time. And you know what? I appreciate that I continue to learn and grow. I have the ability to have new insights and more inklings of, some of the why. But you know what? I've stayed in recovery, and I'm always willing to do the deeper work because it gives me more insight. But it didn't stop me from being in recovery. So, and I 100% know he wasn't thinking of you, because then he wouldn't have been compartmentalized. So there was no thought of, we hear this all the time. People, are acting out, walk in the door, honey, I'm home, and it's like the door is the barrier, and those two worlds don't touch. And so, and I know it's so painful for partners, and I'm not minimizing any of this, and I'm not making excuses for addicts, but just having some acceptance of, there's a lot of brokenness. If he's doing the work, yay, there's a lot of hope for each of you and for both of you, if he's doing that. But it would be like Matt said, if he says something and then he has some more understanding, and the other thing, if 2 years and this is still a focus, I would invite you of, how do you move forward, understanding that more will be revealed as the time is able to do that. But live your life, find a path forward. I love that somebody's, looking at going on vacation together. Great. And they're not just sitting, and I'm not saying you are, but they're not just focused on, the acting out part. How do you gain your life back? So
Totally.
okay, so the next question, what does moving on in a relationship look like? About a month ago, my wife disclosed to me an affair that she had a long time ago. She's been gracious in answering my questions, and I think I have a decent understanding of what happened. I want so much to move on, but I just don't feel ready. How will I know?
Usually if somebody's not ready to move on, it's because there's something they still need to work through. Moving on in a relationship, it's hard, because what I hear you defining as moving on is ready to put it behind you. And so I don't even know if that's a good definition, but that's what it sounds like from your question. And I think to some degree, when pain has been caused, we can't, I'm going to answer this in a weird way. We can't ever put it behind us, as in it doesn't exist. Let's go back to our life as it used to be. I think we need to accept that this is the new experience. This thing happened. So in your case, the affair happened, even though it was a long time ago. We have to now deal with, how were you able to be in the relationship for so long without sharing? I would want to know what allowed you to share now, right? Like I'm going to want to get to some understanding of, what's this been like for you not to share? What's it been like for you to do that? How did it affect you? How has it negatively impacted our relationship? And I had no idea, right? Like, I'm going to want to get curious, even though, like I said earlier, none of those may be able to be answered very easily or very clearly. But what I'm going to recommend is, I mean, man, if you're only a month out, oh gosh, there's a lot of processing that still need to be done. What I would recommend that might speed it along, in this case, would be getting a book like After the Affair by Janice Spring. I've read parts of it. I've had people tell me good things about it. It might help you process quicker. It might help you know what questions to ask faster. So getting into a book of that nature, I think, can help. What's moving on? The best way to describe it from my perspective, moving on is when I can have compassion for my partner, have empathy, know that the behavior isn't okay no matter what, but that I love them and I want to continue building a life with them. Or I love them and I've decided to move my life separate from them. I don't think that that's a bad thing either, if that's what needs to happen. But I would say moving on is with empathy and compassion, having a level of forgiveness where I want to move forward and create a new life, whether it's together or separate. That to me would be, and I'm doing that from a place of peace, not from a place of being reactive. So that would be my best answer there, as well as a little tip. And focus in on, it comes from a place of peace, not a place of reaction or burying or hiding, trying to just make it go away, pretend it doesn't exist. You got to face it head on and acknowledge it.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to throw this in, and it's a little tangent, but we started a new drop-in group for betrayed partners, moving on alone. It's one of those, and this is just for women. And I hear, that this was your wife, but it feels like a good place to interject the moving on alone. We had a number of betrayed partners who had chosen to move on alone, or had been left. That the other person had gone, had chosen not to change and whatever. So for whatever reasons, but that's a new drop-in group that we started a few weeks ago and has been very popular. So if that's a right fit for you, check that out as well. Okay, next question. Tomorrow is the first anniversary of DDA number 1. Oh, I'm sorry. We have been working hard. Finally had disclosure last month. CSATs groups, 12-step. We both have been doing the work. I don't really know what I'm feeling right now. I feel upset, sad, and generally just feeling down. My SA husband trying to show up for me, but because I'm not feeling it, how can I get over this hump? Because I feel like it isn't moving positively towards our coupleship.
I would ask your spouse this: hey, I am in a rough place and I'm grateful that you're trying to show up. It means the world to me. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to stick with me, even if I can't figure this out. I want to, I'm longing to, but will you stick with me as I figure out how to navigate this pain? Ask him if he can stay with you in this. I think that's really important. And then what would it look like for you to be compassionate for yourself and say, despite the desire I have for this to move quicker, it isn't. And so I need to love myself where I am. And I hope that this doesn't last forever. But the more I try to force myself to move on from this, the more I'm going to be frustrated that it's not moving. There's a part of me that says you might need to lean into the acceptance that for right now, this is just where you are. Perhaps you're stuck because you keep trying to push it faster. I don't know for sure, but that was just the quick thought that came up for me. It sounds like you guys are doing good work. I'd keep doing that work. I think any of us, as we put in the effort, typically we will have those things broken up, and it allows us to move forward. Sometimes those things take longer to break up than we expect. Sometimes it's actually quicker than we expect. And so I'd just be gentle on yourself. You've gone through some pretty rough relational stuff, and feeling sad, maybe give yourself permission to feel upset, sad, and feeling down. It makes sense. You've been really hurt. So I hope this helps.
Well, and I put in the chat, Debbie McRae did 2 webinars on grief, and grief is a process, and it's not like, oh, we're past that and it will never affect me again. It does, and a date is a trigger. There's lots of things that can be triggering, and lots of people go, oh, it's the day, but they forget the day before, the the day after. So like Matt said, give yourself some grace and just understand that that you're going to have a little bit of an issue. Now, can you make some new memories? Like, is there something that the two of you can talk about and have an idea of, like, okay, this was a challenging day. Is there something we can do to start creating, a positive around this time? Maybe not on the day. I don't know. Like, talk to each other and find out. But you are, like, with all due respect, a year is great, but Dr. Rob, talks often that partners are typically 18 months to or more behind when they had discovery. So you're doing great, and there's still more to do. But I hope you're seeing, I mean, this is part of what the coupleship is. Understanding that there's grief and loss, and your addict partner caused the hurt, so you're navigating this together, and you're still together and doing the work. So I feel like there's a lot of hope, and yeah, there's a calendar event, so be kind to yourself. Okay, my essay keeps failing on following through with things, keeping his word, etc. He is weeks sober at best. Initial D-Day was 4.5 years ago. We're supposed to be going to a wedding on a beach this weekend, and I feel so unsafe and angry, and I feel like he won't drop his ego. He's more worried about what others think of him being whipped than making this right. How do I keep myself safe while honoring our friends this weekend? What should I ask of him?
Great question. I would say that so I'm going to roll with what I hear to be your judgment, and I'm going to assume that it's totally accurate, right? I don't know the truth, obviously, about whether or not his ego is the issue, right? But what I would tell you in a situation like this is to really focus on asking yourself, what do you need to keep yourself safe? Right? What do you need in order to have a ritual and routine while you're there at the wedding, so that you feel the peace and safety that you need? Sometimes it's surrendering that I can't control whether or not he's triggered. I can't control whether or not he's acting out. But when I'm on this trip, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to spend some time with my friends. I'm going to try to enjoy time with him. And if he puts me in a situation that is uncomfortable, try and talk about it. Here, almost like the very first question I gave, and the conversations to have about the couple going on a vacation, it's the same thing. Let's have a conversation about the things that I'm worried might trigger me, the things that I could use that would bring me safety. What are the things you need from me? I would ask him the same thing. And then ultimately, I want you to decide that you're going to go and have a good time. No matter what happens for him, I want you to decide, I'm going to go celebrate. I'm going to have a blast. I can't worry about what he chooses to do on this weekend. And ask yourself, like, what needs do you have that you may need to enforce in order to keep yourself in a safe place? I don't know what that looks like, whether that's getting a room with separate beds or different rooms, or saying, hey, I'm fine being in the same room and in the same bed, but unless I give the go ahead, no sexy time, or something, right? Like, I'm good with whatever you feel you need, but you need to probably explore how to communicate that. Just be careful, as always, to stay away from things that feel like a punishment or a consequence. Focus on what your needs are and take care of your needs instead of trying to, teach a lesson or something like that.
And I was thinking the same thing. At 4.5 years, and this has been his pattern, I would really invite you to hone in on, what are my boundaries for me?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can control is my actions and reactions. I got no control over anybody else or anything else. And so you know who he is. I mean, you've been doing this part of it for 4.5 years, however long your relationship is. But for 4.5 years, you've been in this where he's not in any kind of recovery, maybe a little bit of abstinence. Big deal. I'm sorry, that doesn't really help. It doesn't change anything. So if these are your friends and not his friends, but if they're your friends, go have fun with your friends, and And I would invite you to look bigger, though, beyond just this wedding. I hear that's a wedding, but focus on your friends, focus on that, whatever you need to do. But what do you need for healthy boundaries for you on a day in and day out basis? And they are your needs: physical, financial, emotional, spiritual. Those things are
Relational.
needs. You say relational, and I say spiritual, and so yeah, but
Well,
yeah.
no,
So,
spiritual. So I say physical, emotional, relational, and spiritual. Those are the four I
oh,
talk.
instead, okay, yeah, okay, and
But
instead of emotional, yeah.
finances would be part of your physical.
Oh, see,
Is
yeah,
how
and
I.
I longer story, but I get people all the time, their finances are completely in a wreck,
Oh yeah.
and there's the physical safety. So however you look at your needs, how's that?
Oh,
However you
and
look at
that's
your
what
needs.
I try and teach people all the time. I actually tell people, throw out the word boundaries, and every time
Mm-hmm,
you're going to use the word boundaries, just say needs.
mm-hmm,
And so my boundary is this. And then ask yourself, my need is this. Is that a need? Or is
mm-hmm,
that a consequence or a punishment or trying to teach a lesson? But
mm-hmm.
no, I love it. You guys are,
Yeah.
that's good.
Well, and it's like, you need safety. That is a need, and you need not to be angry. Like, that is toxic. That toxic anger, it just erodes us, physically. And I mean, like, all kinds of negative consequences. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote, "The body keeps score." All of that, stuff, gets caught up in us, and we can have medical issues as a result. So I'm inviting you to, how do you take care of your needs, and how do you find safety? Even, like, the world isn't safe. Let's just go there. The world isn't safe. So how do you create that safety for you? Having the people that you call. Hopefully you've got friends on speed dial, like, oh, he's acting like a jerk. Maybe he will be, maybe he won't be. But if he is, who do you have that you can be texting and going, but I got my girlfriend over here, and it's so great to see her. I haven't seen her in great, find that safety and find fun. Like, just focus on you and friends and fun. So, okay. And then it says you did a webinar focused on vacations. So apparently you did a
No,
vacation webinar.
I think it was the very last one that Scott and I did together. We did talk about kind of planning for vacations and things like that.
Okay.
Until I saw this comment, I was like, I forgot. And so no, if somebody is curious about that, go back and take a listen or a watch of that. See if that
And I
helps.
posted in the chat the link to the previously recorded webinars. This will be on there as well, but I posted the link so you can find hundreds of
Oh, there's so
previously
many.
recorded webinars. So, okay, next question. In November of 2022, I found out my husband of 28 years had been seeing low-end prostitutes in a crack house for 15 years. He has made tremendous progress, and we are both in counseling. I find myself pulling back when we have good days. How can I move forward when I'm terrified of the future? He's extremely remorseful, but I remain devastated.
Yeah, this is one of those that it's interesting because even the parts of the story that you're sharing make me wonder the way that you say that when you have good days, you pull back, right? There's something there that would say to me that like you're still afraid of connection, right? You're having a good day, but you can't do it, so you pull away, right? You're still afraid of abandonment. You're still afraid of him rejecting you essentially, or betraying you. And so I would focus on all the fears around that. It's interesting because him being extremely remorseful, I would imagine that what you're saying is that's in a good way, like meaning he's showing that remorse in a healthy way. Being terrified of the future, this is such a cliche thing for me to say. I would focus on learning how and what's preventing you from being present in the moment today. Too often we are revisiting the past over and over. We're future tripping, right? And so teaching people to learn how to get focused on today. And what is it today that I need from him? What is it that's coming up for me in this moment? What is it that I'm scared of right now? I would try to really tune in and focus on that. Um, there was something else. How can I move forward? So honestly, I would say focusing on the present, and trying to figure out what are those things that are presently still unresolved. What is it about low-end prostitutes, crack house, 15 years, right? What is it about those things that still you remain stuck on? What is it about the good days? What is that bringing up that makes that want to pull away, right? And so that's probably where I would tell you to focus. Hopefully that's helpful for you.
Yeah, and I think the present is really important because like it sounds like you're having a good day and you're pulling back. And so maybe in the moment going, in this moment we are okay. In this moment we are, we're having a good day. And I'm just giving yourself the grace to be able to appreciate that. I get, that all of this happened, you didn't know about it, and devastating. I'm going to say, because Dr. Rob and I always say this too, if you haven't had an STD test, please get that. That's
Oh,
one of your needs for your
totally.
physical health. So please,
Totally.
please take care of you. And the other thing is, okay, and I love that you're making progress, but you're 9 months in. You're 9 months from having the truck hit you and having this discovery. So and he did it for 15 years that you didn't know. So, the math doesn't even work yet,
Yeah, no,
about the
it's so
time
funny.
frame.
I didn't even put that together. You're 9 months out. To believe that you should be able to have moved forward, I think is so innocently unrealistic. Because I think it's beautiful. You want to move forward. You see the hurt and pain that he's been vulnerable and showing. But goodness gracious, I love that you said that. You're only 9 months out. Like, right? Like this to me sounds like you're in a normal, healthy place of pain.
And I don't know what you're doing, but I hope you're leaning into all of the support resources for betrayed partners on seeking integrity. I hope he's done the Sex Addiction 101 work group. We've got the betrayed partner work group starting again in August. We have so many resources beyond a webinar where you guys can each connect. The drop-in groups for men, that's how things really start to shift. So the more you lean into those resources, the healing can speed up. There's no magic cure, but it can really help. So, and you're not alone. So
We
okay,
got quite a few of these
I
left.
know
I
we're
don't
not
know.
going to get through them. So I'll take a pick. I'm having problems with physical intimacy. We have been married 27 years. And he has had 5 relapses, PA. I was triggered by his CSAT who asked him, how long is he going to wait? Whoa. Oh,
Yeah,
wait, I think this might be, I feel my PA is trustworthy now. However, I don't think he will stay trustworthy. I have boundaries. I guess I will rely on my boundaries to keep safe. I'm not sure if those two are tied together, but
well,
however you want to take them.
so if I'm reading this correctly, I was triggered by his CSET who asked him how long he's going to wait for you to finally be sexually or physically intimate.
Yes, that's what I was reading
And
in that first one.
now, so here's the hard part. I sat here and I wanted to respond with anger. I wanted to rage because that would piss me off so bad. But then I had to stop and realize I've asked questions like that all the time. But I might ask if I have like an angry spouse that, is sitting there, oh, my spouse won't be sexually intimate with me. And they keep processing that same thing. I could see myself saying, hey, I see that you're angry. This seems to keep coming up. I'm curious. Have you thought about it? How long are you willing to wait? And sometimes I'm asking that question because I want them to think about it. Well, I'm never going to leave. Okay, so get this straight. You're angry. You've spent several sessions complaining about it. And I get it. It's got to be really painful not to have sexual intimacy with your spouse, but you don't ever plan on leaving. And so what if your approach isn't going to work? What if we need to focus on changing your approach? Right. And so I had to pause because I don't know the circumstance in which their CSAT asked or would ask that question. If their CSAT is asking that question, like, I'd be out of there in a heartbeat. When are you leaving? Right. Like, that's super messed up. Now, the truth is, I have no idea how your partner interpreted that message. You most likely aren't aware of how the therapist intended it. So I would just be real careful because yes, my instinct was to be super pissed off for you. That would make me really angry. I mean, it actually did. And I had to slow down and go, okay, hold on. What are the possibilities here? Um, but I love that you asked that question, and I think you have a right to be upset, but you might want to ask that question honestly of him. Hey, I'm curious. How long are you willing to wait? What if I can't do this right now? What if it takes me a long time? What if it's years? You going to stick around or are you going to bounce? Like, I might want to ask that question. Now, just because I'm curious about the response, I want to know the way he's thinking. It might give me some insight into what's going on. So I don't know if that makes sense, Tammy.
It does. And I was thinking there's a whole bunch of pieces missing. First of all, did you hear the CSAT say this? Because addicts
Sure.
lie. So if he comes home and says, my CSAT said, how long are you going to wait? I'm sure it came off very different than how Matt just, talked about it. The other thing is 5 relapses. You don't say how long he's supposedly been in recovery. I'm going to go back to abstinence is just not doing it. You can't have a relapse if you're not in recovery. So it's been 27 years that you've been married, but he's 3 months been not acting out. Then he hasn't had 5 relapses. He is still in the cycle of addiction and hasn't really gotten any solid foundation. So there's way more. I don't know, and there's way more context that would need to be explored. I hear you being, upset with that, but I would be curious about a whole bunch of things and want more framework, to look at all of this. But like, how much work is he doing to show you he's safe for you to want to have sex? What is he doing to show you with his actions that that he is changing? That's my thoughts. Can we do one more and then we'll save the rest for the next time?
Sure.
Okay. I feel my PA is trustworthy now, but however, I don't think he will stay trustworthy. I have boundaries. I guess I will try to rely on my boundaries to keep me safe. So I think that's an interesting, let's talk about I think he's trustworthy, but I don't think he's going to stay trustworthy. And to me, that's that doesn't
sound like trustworthy.
Yeah, you're either trustworthy or you're not.
Right. Like I think what is happening here is that you need to own your fear. And I would have that conversation like, hey, I've really been enjoying what you've been doing to help me feel trust. And my fear is that it won't stay that way. And that would be really painful. I don't want that. I want a long-term relationship with you. And so, but I think it's really healthy that you recognize that you need to rely on your needs and that you need to figure out what your needs are to keep yourself in a good place. I think that's good, solid recovery right there. I would suggest you focus on your needs regardless of his behavior or her behavior. And focus on getting yourself stable so that no matter whether they're trustworthy or not, you're going to be okay. It'll be painful if they're not trustworthy, but you're going to be fine and you know how to do healthy living. You know how to do recovery. So I think that's great.
So I say all the time, people say, I don't think I'll ever be able to trust, I'm going to use gender, him. Again, you should not. You should never expect that he can never hurt you again because he's shown that he can. So to me, this is not, I think he's trustworthy, but he's not. I think he's not acting out right now. I don't have confidence that he won't.
Right. Here's what he's been doing lately that's been helping.
And trust your gut if something changes. And I know I just said we're going to save the rest, but we have to do the next one and then we can go. Okay. So the next one is, do you have suggestions for a spouse who is doing half measures? My PA did half measures and I didn't see the relapse coming. And I said this to somebody earlier today. This is why I'm jumping on this, because half in the 12 step, it says half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. So absolutely expect a relapse. If your addict is only doing half measures, anticipate a relapse. Be prepared for that so that you are safe. You can't change
And
his half measures, but
and
you
it
can
goes
take care of you.
it goes back to that last question of where it was like the best thing you can do is focus on getting your needs met in a healthy way, involving them, your partner, as much as possible, but making sure that you have the support system in place that if a relapse happens, you're going to be okay. It'll be painful, it's going to suck, but you're going to be okay. And so I would say focusing on your own individual needs and understanding how to take care of yourself, you're going to be fine.
And somebody added it was to see how committed he was, so that was the reason. So yeah, for the, why I asked about that. So I'm going to capture these, and this recording will be posted. So yeah, does that
Oh,
work?
but the therapist asked,
Yeah. How long are you willing to wait? So
oh,
it
to
was
see how committed he
the
was.
committed.
See, and
So
so it's funny. I love that question.
mhm,
I can see where it would be super bothersome, but part of me
mhm,
is like, yeah, let's
mhm.
challenge him to think, like, is he committed? Because, dude, I'm not sure your attitude's gonna work. You've got to figure out what the anger's about. So anyway,
Yes.
so
Okay.
you're gonna hang on here
I'm going
and
to hang on to these, and we're going to bring them back. So we'll
sounds
be
good.
back. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Matt. Great to see you.
See you guys. Good work.
Bye.